All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful that got there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakwadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful leg, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Shai. All right, and what I want to get into this morning, dealing with, true brotherly love, and that's one of the main things, Yahweh Shai, he put emphasis on, during his ministry, because you had, the leadership at the time, the priesthood, you had the Pharisees, that was so over righteous, that the law became destructive to them, and everyone else. They made the law, this burden. Okay, when you go into the law is rooted in love. When you really go into the law and the purpose of the law, well, it was love for your fellow Israelite. Okay, everything was rooted in love. Even the laws, that caused people to be unalive, well, it was out of love for everyone else. Okay, that was the best decision, okay, to get this nigga or this woman or both out of here, okay, for the sake of everyone else, out of love for everyone else, okay. So Jake had missed the point, and Jake, the Pharisees had weaponized the law, all right. The Sadducees, which the Sadducees, they was of a higher rank, because they was, the chief priest, and the high priest was of the Sadducees, and these men were well off. They had pretty much took the bag, from the Roman Empire, to keep Jake watered down, you know. So the leadership was terrible at the time with Yahweh Shah, and there was no brotherly love. The Sadducees, they only cared for themselves. All right. The Pharisees, they was, rigorous, with the law, that they, voided out love. Okay. So like I said, when you go into the law is rooted in love, man. So when you go here, I want to get this account. This is a book of St. John, chapter 5 and verse 1. It says, after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Yahweh Shah went up to Jerusalem. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market, by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue, what it is, Bethesda, all right, Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folks, all right, or people that were lame, all right. And I'm reading NLT. It says, crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then, so every so often, you have the angel come down and touch the water, and their water, will have a healing power to it. And it says, and trouble the water, whosoever then first after the troubling, okay, stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And a certain man was there which had an infirmity 30 years, all right, 30 and 8 years, for 38 years. When Yahweh Shai saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked, would you like to get well, or would you like to be made whole? It says, I can't, sir. The sick man said, for I have no one to put me in the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me. The Yahweh told him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath. So it says, so the Jews, all right, before it says, the Jews therefore said unto him, thou, all right, that was cured, it is the Sabbath day, it is not lawful for thee to carry thy bed. We read in the NLT, they said to the man who was cured, you can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry the sleeping mat, man. And just look at the thinking of these niggas, man, the reasoning of these niggas. These niggas talking about carrying the sleeping mat on the Sabbath day, man. and this man was just paralyzed. Okay, this man was been through for 38 years, man. Okay, you see, it said he was impotent. Okay, for 38 years, man. Okay, and all Jake see is him carrying the mat on the Sabbath, man. See how Jake judgment was off. Okay, that's why Yahweh Shah stayed, all right, on these niggas' ass, man. Okay, Jake was tripping, you know, and these were supposed to be the leaders. This was the Sanhedrin. Okay, and it says, but he replied, the man, all right, who healed me, told me, pick up your mat and walk. And that was Yahweh Shah showing his rank too, man. You know, like, look, you healed. Now, Yahweh Shai, he's the Lord of the Sabbath, man. Okay? You see, the Sabbath was made for man, not the man, you know, made for the Sabbath, man. Okay? The law wasn't made to work against us, man. You know, and put us in binds. Okay? That's why we can't be too over righteous on this side because of the circumstances we in. And we love the law. We keep the law to the best of our ability, man. We reverence the law, man. Okay? We reverence the law of Yahweh Bashim Al Shah, man. Okay? To the best of our ability, man. And we constantly get better at the law. Okay? And it's a balance of understanding, okay, we in certain situations and you can try to apply a law and be over righteous, man. We can put ourselves in the bind. Okay? This man has been healed 38 years, and what he supposed to, how Shah was supposed to wait the next day. And then the angel, okay, you know, Yahweh Shah, what he supposed to wait the next day. This man been impotent for 38 years, man. Okay? And we're going to expound on this. It says, who said such a thing as that? They demanded. The man didn't know, for Yahushua had disappeared into the crowd. But afterward, Yahushua found him in the temple and told him, now you are well, so stop sinning, or something even worse may happen to you. So, you know, just as we're being made whole, you know, by this word, you know, because this word is doing the healing, you know, because we're being healed, you know, because we represent, you know, the lame, the deaf, the blind, okay? We represent that now in this time in the spirit, in this word, all right? Yahweh has healed those things, okay? And it's for us not to go back, you know, into sinning, which means intentionally sinning without care, okay? But to truly repent and come back to righteousness, man. You know, so we're not being healed just for the sake of being healed. No, we're being healed, okay, to learn righteousness, man. Okay, to learn obedience. You see? It says, then the man went and told, all right, the leaders that it was Yahushua who healed them. So the leaders, all right, began harassing Yahushua for breaking, all right, the Sabbath rules. Okay, you read this in the KJV. And therefore did the Jews persecute Yahushua, okay, and sought to slay him because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Yahushua answered, my Father worketh hither, all right, hitherto, and I work. Okay? So, Jake, when you look at that situation, man, here it is. They're mad at the man that was healed, and they're mad at Yahushua for healing them. You see how off Jake is, man? Because anyway, if they were supposed to be leaders, they should have been at that pool regulating, making sure that everybody got their turn to get healed. Okay? They should have came and seen who's been around that pool the longest, and they should have they could have organized that and started getting those people healed, man. They could have started a system with that pool. They could have put somebody over there, and they brothers could have been getting healed, man. That's a free healing. That's a free miracle, man. And instead of Jake regulating this free miracle, okay, out of love for their brother, these niggas worried about Yahweh Shah doing it on the Sabbath, man. You know, and that's why Yahweh Shah will be pissed at them niggas, man. You know, Jake didn't have no brotherly love, man. It's like, God damn, you worried about him carrying his mat? He couldn't walk. That's a blessing he can carry his mat. See, Jake's perspective was off, man. They were trying to be so righteous and technical in the law. Okay, but when you go into the Pharisees, they was adding things to the law. They made the law extremely rigorous, man. Them niggas was tripping, man. Okay, but there was no brotherly love, man. Yahweh Shah came and he was giving an example of brotherly love. Okay, and Jake didn't have it. That's why when you go here, Jake was so Jake was so trying to be, and see, Jake was trying to have a competition with the law. Okay, they was missing the whole point of brotherly love, man. Okay, they had completely, weaponized the law. Okay, against Jake, man. Matthew 22, and I started at 34. It says, but when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. The one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? So they look at the law like it was a competition. The law worked together, okay, for the sake of forwarding, okay, life on the earth, man. You see? The law is the Most High's wisdom of forwarding life on the earth and managing the affairs, okay, of the planet Earth, man. See, Jake was missing the whole concept of the law. Jake thought, which law was the greatest? Like, what, nigga? All of them are important, man. They all work together, man, for the greater good of everybody. Okay? Jake was missing the point. You see, the law was clout to Jake, man. Okay? Who can do the law the most, man? And he said same spirit back today, man. Okay, amongst Jake. And those Jakes that put so much emphasis on the law, man, they're spiritually, all right, dehydrated, man. They don't have it in the spirit, man. Okay? So you go here, Matthew 22 and 37, Yahweh Shah said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy power with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, because it starts with being faithful to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. The Sadducees, they had become faithful to, the Romans. Their concern was the Romans. Okay, the high priest let you know that when he said, look, if we don't do something by Yahweh Shah, the Romans going to come and take away our place. Okay, the status that they had, the position that they had over Jake. Okay, so they're concerned. They didn't love the Most High out of their heart, mind, and soul. They was concerned about the Romans, just like Jake today, man. You say that a lot of our people, their love for this world, that's why they obey Esau. That's why Jake put on the mask during the demic. Jake when he got the juice during the demic. Okay, because they completely obedient to Esau, man. Because they love this current world, this current age. That's where their love is at, man. Okay? So this truth, we fall back in love with our power. We fall back in love with righteousness, man. You see? Going back, and it says, and the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets, man. Yeah, so there's Yahweh Shah like, look, you should love thy neighbor as thyself. Because think about it. If you was paralyzed for 38 years, wouldn't you want somebody to heal you? Okay, so when Yahweh Shah healed this man, you should have been pleased. You should have been happy. Because when you want somebody to heal you, okay, and even before Yahweh Shah, like I said, if they was, they so technical in the law, but there was no love. Okay, why you couldn't make sure that everybody was getting to their pool and getting their free healing? Why Jake wasn't doing that? Because it wasn't no brotherly love, man. Okay? Do thy neighbors thyself, man. You would want somebody to heal you, or you was like that. Okay? you would want someone to help you if you was in that predicament, man. So Jake was, missing the whole point, of the law, which the law was rooted in brotherly love, man. Not committing adultery, that's love, man. Okay? Not stealing, not bearing false witness. Okay? Returning your neighbor's livestock. Okay? Even if you got into it with your neighbor, let's say you injure him, guess what? When he's injured, guess what? You got to do all his daily chores now. You gotta make sure his family's straight, cause you don't injure him to the point that he can't work. Okay, you see, and that was preventive too, because it will make you think about, okay, getting into it with this, getting into a physical altercation with this man over, something minor worth, because you go into the law, man. The law is rooted in love, man. Okay, every aspect of the law. Okay, so when you go here, let's get this in Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. You know, and love ain't just, because love comes in rebuke as well. So love ain't just this thing that, Esau make it like this passive, pat on your back. It's okay. Love comes in rebuke as well. Love comes in charity. Love comes in rebuke, admonishment. Okay, chastisement. That's a part of love. The Lord love chastise whom He love. You know, but it's for the sake of what? Correction, man. Okay, not to destroy. This is Wisdom of Solomon 7 and 22. It says, "For wisdom, which is the work of all things, taught me, for in her is an understanding spirit, holy." All right, one only, manifold. All right, which means, wisdom, is manifold. Okay, so you can apply, wisdom to many different things. You can apply this, particular wisdom to many different things. All right, this wisdom has many applications, man. Okay, and it says, subtile, know how to be subtile, being shrewd in righteousness. Okay, and it says, let me keep reading. It says, understand the spirit, one only, manifold, subtile, lively, clear, undefiled, plain, not subject to hurt, loving the thing that is good, quick, which cannot be letted, ready to do good. Okay? Jake should have been in the spirit of ready to do good, man, instead of this mindset of of the law, looking around the corner to see who's breaking the law. Okay? You see, like you private investigator, you're scoping everyone to see if they breaking the smallest law. Okay? So you can condemn instantly, man. Jake was Jake was acting like Esau with this surveillance state, man. You see? Jake was acting like the Esau this surveillance state, man. Tripping. Okay? It says, kind to man, steadfast, sure, free from care, having all power, overseeing all things, and going through all understanding, pure and most subtile spirits, man. So true wisdom is ready to do good. Like I said, it's not just going around doing random, deeds for people, okay? But also having the discernment of when to do good, okay? And also having this perspective of brotherly love, man. There's Jakes that not in the truth, man, that, we give kind gestures and they give kind gestures, man, because that's the thing about wisdom. It help you read spirits, let you know when to retreat, fall back, let you know when to engage, okay, let you know how much to engage, man. Wisdom is making us skillful, man, okay, and it's a brotherly love aspect to it, because there's certain Jakes that not in the truth that we see in our day to day, and they be cool, you treat that man how you want to be treated, man. You consider that man how you want to be considered. Okay? So, and especially amongst the brothers, especially the Israel of the Most High, as the scriptures say, man. So, yeah, just want to put that out there, man. Just reading the account, just hit my spirit, man, how off Jake was, man. No brotherly love, My Lord will, you brothers. All right, and you sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations, hopefully, shalom.